So we're going to give it a second to start. In the meantime, Coach, we're now live. We're going to show this. I'm going to show it some other places as well. But thank you for taking the time to sit down with me today. Obviously, we're here to talk about what happened in Cleveland. We've been seeing some stuff around some other places. Before we dive into, though, what happened in Cleveland, I want to kind of go back a second. So you start coaching in like the 80s, and you're starting in college. You have success kind of everywhere you are. Around 2000, I think it is, you get your first shot in the NFL. And it's with what was then known as the Redskins. Mm-hmm. Right? You go through your assistant coach, position coach, you've been to a few NFL teams. Eventually, we know you become head coach of the Raiders. And then you move on to, you're back and forth, but you end up at Cincinnati. You're the assistant coach of the year in 2015, right? So throughout those years, call it that 15-year stretch, everywhere you've gone, there's been success, right? Offensive coach of the year. Obviously, you know what you're doing on the offensive side of the ball. My question to start right off the bat is, when those conversations start with Cleveland, is there, I guess, first question is there multiple teams at this point talking to you about maybe making a move from Cincinnati?
Yeah, there was multiple teams. There was San Francisco that I interviewed with. Obviously, Cincinnati wanted me to stay. You had Cleveland, and then you had the New York Giants. Those were the teams.
And now when they approach you, I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, through your agent, right? They say, hey, we want Coach Jackson. We want to bring him on as the head coach through your agent. When you start to have those conversations, what are they about? So here's a team that's 3-13, right? Is the conversation, we're going to blow this up and start over with a whole new roster? Or is it, here's our core. Do you think you can take this team and make it a winner?
It's normally, here's our core. And do you think you can take this team and make it a winner? Because I don't know if they're far enough along in their process to know exactly who they're going to let go, exactly how contracts will all play out based on what the new league year would bring from a financial standpoint. I just think there's a lot that go into it. So I think most people come into it with the team they have, because in the interview process, I got to talk about the team that they have. I can't talk about the team that they may have. So your conversation is going to be about who they are now. What's the vision that you have for that team as you move forward? What is the culture that you want to create? And how do you create it? And as I keep saying, people have to understand, you go take an NFL job, you're taking the job because they haven't done well. So that would just say to you immediately, just if you're just an everyday person, you would say, okay, well, then that team wants to get to winning as fast as they can. They wouldn't want to do anything to stop winning, because that's what you need to do. Because the reason why the new coach is there, because the old coach didn't win.
So I took a look at the roster. And so that 3-13 roster, and now I'm using Pro Football Reference. So if there's anything that's incorrect, right, correct me. Mm-hmm. But I'm looking at the roster and I see from the skill positions, right, quarterback, wide receivers, tight ends, 2 return from the previous year as starters. I look at the offensive line, 1 returning player, obviously Joe Thomas. I look at even the defense. I believe 1 player from the defensive line. All new linebackers, all new defensive backs. So the team that was 3-13 that you now take over, it's not the same team. Was that you saying all these guys got to go, GM, get me some new guys? Or what is happening? Is there those conversations to make all those? Because that's a lot of change.
No. When it starts to happen, that becomes a conversation. To me, that should have been really laid out in the interview process. If you were going to, what you just described, and I think there was 1 more player on offense, you named 1, there was 2. Joel Bitonio did return on the offensive line. You would think that you would really lay that out and say you're going to have a very skeleton team. It's not going to be the team you have. So as I've said before, the best team I had when I went into Cleveland was when I took the job. The best team I had was a 3-13 team. That's why I get so disappointed sometimes when people say, well, you couldn't win. Well, we just took a 3-13 team and made it worse. So how do you justify winning? And it leads me to the next point, Anthony. That's why people don't understand tanking. See, people would look at that and say, "Well, coach, that's tanking." What the coaches were doing, what the players were doing, that's not tanking. Tanking is the other side of this. Is when you build a team that can't win. When you just said all those veteran players who played in the National Football League are now taking off a team, and you infuse it with a lot of first-time players, a lot of first-time talent, and if those players are not the players you're taking off, if those players are not as good as the players that were taken off the team, then you have a team that can't win. And that's what people have to understand.
Yeah, and that look, I'm not knocking any professional player. You're in the NFL. You've done something right. But if I look at a team of, again, Cody Kessler, Crowell at the back, Terrell Pryor, who's a quarterback, right, that converted to a wide receiver, Coleman, that's not a team that's really striking fear into the hearts of other teams. And go ahead. So
especially in AFC North, and those players that you just mentioned are all fine players,
right? For sure.
I mean, people have to understand this is not against the players. The players worked hard for me. I don't have an issue with any of the players. Okay. What I have an issue with is people believe that those players first were picked by me. And then number two, that I didn't know what I was doing with them. And that's the narrative that started to get spun, in that people don't understand none of those things were in my contract. I wasn't able to pick the team. And once I realized what was happening, I did everything I could to fight it, because I know what that does to coaches and what it does to players and what it does to an organization.
So how much can you share of the conversation? So when you start seeing these guys, being moved on from and these other players being brought in, how much of that conversation can you share?
Oh, I can share. I mean, to me, it's what are we doing? And it was always, don't worry about it. We're going to get better players. Because if you take a player off, you believe you're going to put another talented player on. The narrative that was told to me is, hey, look here, we're going to give you what you need. And that's what my interview process was. We're going to give you what it takes for you to win and to be successful here in Cleveland. And so that's what I was anticipating. So as you did start to take players off, who I thought were NFL quality players, I'm looking for you to put better players on. And if you really go through the roster, we were putting on guys who were street free agents.
Oh, I know. I was looking at the roster. That's why I'm asking, if I'm a coach, I'm like, hey, hold on a minute. I know that the GM puts the players in place, but one of the things I looked at was, obviously they were big on analytics. And, you and I had a analytics expert on our show that we do every week, and we talked about analytics, but analytics only takes you so far. Am I correct in the thinking that analytics was going to be a piece, but it ended up kind of taking over some of those decisions?
Absolutely. And that's what I was led to believe, is that it would be a piece of the process, not that it would lead the process. And what I found, that it was leading the process, because if it wasn't, it wouldn't have led to some of the guys we drafted. And so no coach who has experience, and if you go look at my staff, that was a very experienced staff. I mean, there were Super Bowl winning coaches on that staff. We knew how to prepare players, pick players, get them ready, the whole 9 yards. But if people, which I appreciate you've done, because most people won't be as diligent as you are and dig like you did to find out and go, whoa, wait a minute, just look at the roster. It's not really set up for winning. It's set up for competing. Competing and winning is two different things.
Yeah, because then I look again. So from that 1-15 season to the next season, the 0-16 season, again, it's almost the same look, where there's this huge turnover, right? You go from Kessler to Kaiser, Crowell stays, Coleman. I think Coleman and Crowell were the only, again, of the skill positions that stayed. The offensive line has, again, another shakeup. The defense, another shakeup. What are they telling you behind the scenes? Because clearly it doesn't take, a football genius to say, we're doing something different here that maybe isn't going to lead to success. In the background, what are they telling you?
That we're going to win, that it's going to lead to winning. And my whole thing was, in my writings and my sharing with the organization, you're right, it's going to lead to winning, but it's going to lead to winning with other coaches. It's going to lead to winning with other people leading it, because a coach cannot survive all these losses if you put him in a situation. And I understand, if you go back, And it's really hard for me because I keep telling people, and people just can't see it, and I understand. No coach in the National Football League would put himself in a position where he loses his value, where he doesn't win. Nobody would do that. I don't know any coach that would do that. I sure wouldn't do it. And I'm a minority coach. So I'm for sure not gonna do that to myself. I don't have to. I could stay where I am in Cincinnati. I could have went and tried to secure the New York Giants job. I could have did other things. So I'm not gonna kill my career by making a decision to go dive into something that didn't look like it was going to be victorious for me, especially after being at the Raiders head coach and getting fired at 8-8.
Right.
I'm not going to do
Yeah.
that.
Well, and that's the other part, right? It's so hard to be a head coach. It's even harder to become a minority head coach.
Mm-hmm.
It's even harder to have a second chance as a head coach, as a minority head coach, right? Like when we've looked at those numbers and they're staggering how low they are. So for sure, you know your record is going to follow you wherever you go. So even after those 2 seasons, though, you're back. So before we dive into what happens in that final season, because I know there's a lot there, let's talk about some of the draft. So, a lot of times I've heard 2 different scenarios. GM, listen,
Mm-hmm.
I draft the players, you coach them. In other places where there's, good synergy, it's we work together to, fill in those missing pieces. How much say did you have in the draft of some of these players? All right, looked like we lost Coach here for a minute, so we're going to give a second for our, gotta love technology. Give Coach a second.
I'm here, buddy. Is that
There we go. Yeah, you're back.
was given? The context is, I as an 8-8 head coach at Oakland, who has a top 10 offense, I had to go coach on defense. I just want you to let that just think about that for a second. Not become a offensive coordinator within the league, not become a quarterback coach. I had to go coach on defense as an assistant to the special teams coach, as an assistant to the secondary coach, before I ever got a chance to go back on offense. Why is that so important? If I knew I could get fired as an offensive head coach at 8-8, you think I would ever take a job to where I knew I was going to lose in the beginning? I walked in and I was very clear in what I needed as a coach in order to take any job. One was the ability to win. I've already been fired before. So I'm going to take any job that wasn't going to give me the things that I needed to be. So it's winning, the opportunity to have the right resources for people to. It takes a village in order for an organization to win. It takes collaboration, alignment, and all those things. But it also takes enough. Get the right staff, again, secure the right players, create the right culture in order to win. And I knew all these things. I mean, I know what that looks like. And so I shared all those things. And now fast forward to what you said about years 16 and 17. What was being said is we're going to get better players. After the first year, it was like, yeah, well, okay, we don't have very good players. We need to move forward and get better players. But we were a 1-15 team, and I was told I did a great job. How can that be? I was told that had to be the hardest year of your life, but you did an outstanding job.
Right, because everything we hear from even internally, right? It was the roster that you had, the players. You didn't hear any complaints from players. Everyone kind of described you as a players coach. And I don't think the expectations were that high. And again, from that 3-13 team, they gutted it. So it was a different team. They draft. I want to jump to the draft because they draft Myles Garrett, but that wasn't necessarily the direction they were really thinking of going.
No, the whole thing was about securing a quarterback. And again, I had made a decision after the first year of seeing how things went, because I'm always stuck with the famous "trust me on this one" comment when it came to Cody Kessler. And I like Cody. Cody's an unbelievable person, but I knew that I would not have drafted him as my quarterback for the Cleveland Browns football team. And I couldn't understand, and I wanted to understand how we made that decision, because it didn't come from our coaching staff, it didn't come from the scouts, it came from their analytical process. And so I struggled really hard with that, because that's what I do. I coach quarterbacks, I grow quarterbacks. So now I'm having to coach a guy who, not that I didn't like, but I just didn't think was what I was looking for. And of course, it wasn't my vision of the quarterback. And he played well. And I worked my tail off getting him to that spot to where he did play very competitive football. But at the same time, we couldn't win. So that bothered me. So heading into the 2017 draft, I was going to dig my heels in the sand, that if we were going to, because again, it was said, and people can go find it, we're going to take shots at quarterbacks. Well, that wasn't true, because you take the first year, we wasn't taking shots at quarterback when we take this guy in the third round. I mean, we had the second pick of the draft. Well, here we are again. We're going to take shots, but now we're going to take a shot at a guy that I didn't think could be the quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. And for several reasons, I just didn't think the environment for him, his personality, his makeup, it was going to be the right fit. And I needed to see more football out of him in order for me to jump on the table and say, this guy's the first pick of the draft. Well, they were very comfortable with their process. And again, I never was showed the process. That's the other thing, Anthony, you have to understand. Nobody gave me the algorithm to say, this is how we make a decision that this guy is now up as one of the top quarterbacks in the history of the National Football League. I never saw it. I don't know what that is. And so that right there should tell you something. So I made a decision, and I told ownership and I told the GM, I will not privately or publicly support the choice if you take this quarterback. I just won't do it.
Right.
And
now we're talking about Mitch Trubisky,
yes,
right? That's the quarterback in question here.
Yeah.
And again, nothing against Mitch at all, but to be first overall based on his body of work or limited body of work in college for a team that's looking for an elite, right, franchise quarterback, it's a reach.
it
right?
Was.
Forget what we know today. Even
Right.
then, it would have been a reach.
Right.
And so now, as an offensive-minded coach, you dig your heels in for, let's be honest, a generational defensive talent. But you're saying, hey, we need to shore up this defense too, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we were void of premium talent, in my opinion, in a lot of spots. And when I look at the National Football League, if you don't have a quarterback, and if you can't rush the quarterback, and if you can't protect the quarterback, I mean, it just doesn't go very well for you. So the next best player that I had seen based on videotape was Myles Garrett by far. He was the best player. I thought he was a generational talent. I think he's an amazing person. I think he's a hard worker, and it was the right fit.
Without, you don't name names, but the other coaches, unless you want to, what the other coaches, your assistant coaches, your coordinators, right? I'm sure they're having conversations. Are they shaking their heads too, going, we don't know what's going on?
Oh yeah, I will name names, because Coach David Lee will tell the truth. Any of my staff, people can call and ask. That's what gets me. You know, people think it's just me with a hard on, or whatever you want to say, for the Browns. I am excited that the Browns are winning. This is not about the Browns football team today. This is not about that. I'm not bitter because they're winning. I'm disappointed because of the fraud and the betrayal that was put on me and my staff. That's what bothers me, and the players that play for me, and the fans. That, to me, all that's encompassing. And so Coach Lee will tell you, there's no way that we wanted to be put in that situation. And there was other quarterbacks that we had rated ahead of him.
As a staff, right?
Yes.
I know you're even, I think it's your dog that wants to join the conversation, which feel free if if they want to join. We might get mine joining here in a minute too. So you, the staff, you're all kind of scratching your heads going, hey, who are some of the quarterbacks you had ahead?
Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson.
Yeah. Okay. So no surprises. Those
No,
those two.
no.
Um, so now you're not getting the players that you need to succeed. You're being told, "Hey, you've done a great job considering the roster that we put in front of you." But they're not telling you, "Hey, we're doing this analytics instead of coaching with the assist of analytics." They're not saying analytics is driving this bus, right?
They're not telling everybody else that it is. But look, we're professional NFL coaches. We've been in the business long enough. We now know, I now know, but I'm trying to keep my staff together, know it's going to be okay. We're going to work through this. At the same time, I'm fighting it every day, Anthony. I mean, like I said, I have a paper trail that goes from here all the way to LA, so it's not something, this is not something that's made up. This is something that is well documented that was going on. And I asked them to stop in turn because I knew it would kill coaches' careers, it would hurt players. And eventually, I know the fans would turn on me. And I know the players, eventually, you can't stand and lead players if you continue to lose battles. You can't do it. I mean, so you can only do that so much. And I knew where this was going to head. And that's exactly how it ended up.
Yeah, because it's funny. That's what the feedback I get, especially from Cleveland fans, is look at the record. That's all anyone wants to point to. And I've asked the question, well, don't you want to know what actually happened? Like, how did this happen? So they're telling you behind the scenes it's a success. Analytics are driving this bus. They're clearly looking to make moves like Trubisky at the draft, which we've talked about before. And I know this is something that now it's weighing on you, right? Because now you're trying to protect your players. You still want to put a winner out there. Obviously, your coaches. When the 0-16 season is over, many don't know this. At what point? I know there's a contract extension that happens. When does that occur? Or did I jump too far ahead?
No, you're fine. Can you close that door, Rochelle? Can you close that door? Go ahead. I'm okay.
So yeah,
No,
it was about
it was right after about the 8th game, 9th game, right around the 30th of, if I'm not mistaken, October, that myself, Michelle, my agent, we sat in a office with Jimmy and Dee, where he told me, "I'm sorry for what I did to you. I apologize for what I did to you and to your family, and for that particular reason, here I am offering you a contract extension." And I said there was 3 things that needed to be addressed in order for that to be okay. Any I didn't want any.
getting a bit of a spotty connection with your coach again. So maybe we just give it a second.
You there?
Yeah, we got you back.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I don't know where I stopped there.
We had you at you sat down, Michelle, yourself, your agent, kind of in October, to talk about the contract extension, apologizing for kind of what they've put you through, and then we got bits and pieces, so maybe we can get the tail end of that. All right, so we're gonna be back with Coach Hue Jackson here in a minute, talking about what really happened in Cleveland. Unfortunately, we're having some internet issues, which, hey, it happens. So for those of you that have kind of jumped in and out, feel free to. We're gonna do a little Q&A at the end as well. So send through your questions for Coach Hue Jackson. Here we are. I haven't. Can you hear me? Okay, Coach. I have an idea.